Welcome to the Emotional Eating Unwrapped podcast. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, an emotional eating and weight loss coach for women looking to fall in love with eating, create healthy attachments with food, and lose weight sustainably. Hello and welcome to another new episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, and it is November 1st when I'm recording this episode today for you. It is the first day of November, or as some people like to say, the day after Halloween. And so if you are listening to this and you still have Halloween candy, this is your permission slip to throw out that Halloween candy. But today we're going to be talking not about Halloween candy. We're going to be talking about gut health, and we're going to talk specifically about the online obsession with gut health and with clean eating and its role in emotional eating. How gut health is something that is important to focus on, but an over focus on gut health and over focus on hormones in the sense where we end up micromanaging our diet so much that it ends up being a trigger for emotional and binge eating. That's what we're going to talk about today. So it seems to me, and as a functional dietitian, I am very, very into gut health. I think it's super important for mood, for hormone balance, for weight. And whenever I coach people one-on-one or even in all of my mentorship programs and everything that I do, gut health is always weaved in a way that, in a way that is natural, just in the way that I present eating strategy to people. Because ultimately, gut health, eating for gut health isn't necessarily that difficult. It's kind of just intuitive in the sense that once you connect and understand yourself, your hunger cues, you have a little bit of an education about nutrition as far as like nutrients go and micronutrients and a little bit about macronutrients. Like when you understand all that stuff and you have some sort of awareness of it, then gut health becomes second nature. And what I've been noticing over the last decade or so is that every time that people talk about gut health, they're selling some new trend, whether that's something related to clean eating, whether that's, some sort of elimination diet or a detox, a sugar detox, something that's promising to quote unquote fix our gut issue and in turn transform our lives. And I completely get it. I totally get the appeal of having a solution to those uncomfortable feelings, whether they're physical, whether they're emotional. And it can be so enticing to want to just plug into one of these things. But here's the thing about that. While gut health is very important, as I mentioned, obsessing over clean eating can actually backfire, especially for those of us who struggle with emotional eating. And today we're going to unpack how this obsession with food purity and gut health, and you have to eat in this particular nature, can lead to restrictive behaviors and ultimately make our relationship with food even more complicated. So let's start with the health craze. What's driving the health craze? Well, the internet has given us so much information. And if we're being really honest, it's not so much information as honestly misinformation, because there's often missing information to a lot of the information that's on the internet in regards to food and our health. And gut health has become wrapped up in all of that. It's really become a trendy word that has a lot of marketing value to it. And we're constantly sold this narrative that if we just fix our gut health, we're going to feel better, we're going to lose weight, we're going to have more energy. And it becomes this promise that people have built products around. And this is a problem because the products are often, they're shallow. The products are shallow. They're quick fixy, right? I remember when I first stumbled into this world of clean eating back in the early 2000s, I bought into this because I wasn't as informed. I didn't have as much knowledge as I do now. And it was really tempting. I would think, this is it. This is what I need. I've been struggling with emotional eating for years. I was struggling with yo-yo dieting. So I figured that this idea of getting control and fixing my gut, and by extension, that would fix everything else, I really bought into. And so I bought books. I started following all these rules because ultimately, when people are selling gut health as a product, it's always going to come with a rule. So if you look at any program that is selling you the promise of good gut health, it's going to be a 10-day, 5-day, 30-day detox. It's going to be an elimination diet. It's going to be some sort of food combining situation where you're combining this macronutrient with this macronutrient and you have to eat it in this kind of way. There's rules. And that's not the pathway. That's not the pathway. Following more rules, eliminating foods left and right, obsessing over what's the right way to eat, what's clean enough, what's pure enough, what I can combine, the exact order of how I eat things, like that's not going to help, because what happens with that is that drive for control, which makes you feel really in control at first, is actually pulling you away. And it was pulling me away, farther away from listening to my body. And as you know, listening to your body, turning on that channel, right? Turning on that wavelength is exactly what we need to heal emotional eating, to actually feel in control, to actually get the results that we want, and even to succeed at having a good gut. Because our gut is connected to our brain. And if our brain is moving in overdrive, trying to think about all of these rules, all of these food combining, all of this clean eating, if I'm doing it right, all of the different routines and schedules that we have to follow, our brain is connected to our gut, and our gut is going to be imbalanced because our brain is imbalanced. And so when we get to a place where we balance our brain, we balance our nervous system, we feel calm, we feel relaxed, we can listen to our bodies, and we trust, that is where we get ourselves into a place for the gut to be in good health. And what happens, when we become so focused on food purity, that there's a real slippery slope between that and restrictive behaviors. You have to follow certain rigidness. And people that have a tendency to slip into restrictive behaviors can feel really good about something like this, but it takes very little for us to feel completely overwhelmed by being overcome by being in a restriction. When we do these types of cleanses, food combining, all this different stuff. And ultimately, what we're buying into is a one-size-fits-all approach to nutrition, right? Nothing about a 10-day detox is customized for you. Nothing about a 10-day detox says listen to what your body wants or listen to your hunger cues. It's about you plugging into a one-size-fits-all and following the leader for 10 days and then, having an outcome at the end. But the outcome isn't something that you quite understand how you got there. The outcome is not something you could replicate or something that's predictable for you for the future. And replication and predictability is what makes for a calm nervous system and what makes for a healthy gut. So let's talk about how clean eating, that, we're talking about a little bit now, but more specifically for emotional eaters, how it can backfire, right? This type of way of approaching eating and food. So one of the big issues with elimination diets or overly strict eating is that ultimately it leads to feelings of deprivation. Right? At first, like I said before, it feels good. It's like, oh, I have a plan. I have something that I could follow, and it's like new and exciting. But eventually, when we start cutting out entire food groups or avoiding certain foods altogether, it leaves us feeling restricted. It doesn't feel like the ends justifies the means, even if the ends is a weight loss. And I know you know that because many people listening to this podcast have done that before and have already lost weight that they've gained back a few times. So you know that when you do programs like this and approach eating this way, the end doesn't usually justify the means, because if it did, we wouldn't still be feeling like we're in the same place. Because what happens is that once we start to feel deprived, once the body starts to feel deprived, something shifts and we start craving the things that we're trying to avoid. And then when we start craving the things that we're trying to avoid, our brain starts going into hypervigilance. We start getting anxious. We start negative self-talk. Our brain starts going crazy. And then if we do actually give in, we feel like a failure. I know that's how I felt. Right? I remember being so strict with myself. First 2 weeks, loved it. Right? If it was like a month-long thing, maybe not the first 2 weeks, actually. First 5 days, loved it. That's why people do 5-day cleanses. Because after 5 days, 10 days max, our bodies just start to hate us. Because we kind of lose that new relationship energy with the diet plan or with the program. And now it's just kind of like, ugh, this is so annoying. Right? So that's why these things are 10 days. Because you get the quick win before the whole house of cards starts falling down. Right? So you get the quick win. But the thing is like, after you finish the program, you feel like, oh, I'm done with the program. Now let me go back to my regularly scheduled programming. And then everything starts coming back again and you've learned nothing. You've ended up learning nothing out of that 10 days. And your body hasn't really detoxed or healed for real because you weren't in control of that process. You weren't intuitive and attuned to that process. I remember what it was like to be stuck in the cycle of emotional eating. I tried every diet out there, counting, tracking, restricting, but nothing ever lasted or worked. Food controlled my life and my thoughts, and I constantly felt guilty after eating. But once I learned how to heal the emotional triggers behind my eating and trust my body, everything changed. I stopped obsessing over food, the weight came off naturally, and I found real freedom in how I ate and lived. I created the Eat Freely, Live Fully year-long mentorship to help other women experience the same transformation so you can stop battling with food, you can lose weight without deprivation, and you can feel confident in your body again. In this mentorship, you'll get personalized coaching, weekly check-ins, bi-weekly meditations, and a community of women who truly get you. Plus, you'll have access to my signature programs, The Emotional Eating Solution and Decoding Permanent Weight Loss. And to help you get started, your first month is just $33, so no pressure. It's just a chance to see what's possible for you. Click the link in the show notes to start your journey today, because you don't have to do this alone anymore. I'll be there with you every step of the way. I remember my first situation like that. I felt like a complete failure. I felt like I had just ruined all my quote unquote progress. But the progress was a result. It wasn't a healing. And that's what I learned. Ultimately, after the guilt, after the shame, that was so overwhelming for me. And, when I was able to take a step back, I was able to realize that this really intense urgency and cravings that I was feeling with food, it wasn't really my fault, especially that would happen after I had done something restrictive like this. It wasn't really my fault. It was the way that it was set up with the rules and the restriction and the obsession over good, bad, because that's essentially what that type of stuff puts you in, right? When we're constantly worried about what we're eating, if we're doing it right, there creates so much stress and anxiety. And for so many of us, food ends up becoming both the problem and the solution to that problem, right? It's the problem, but then we use it to make us feel better or numb or distract, right? So we use it for comfort, we use it to feel in control, and then we end up right back where we started, feeling trapped in a cycle that feels impossible to break. And if you think about it rationally, the idea that a 10-day detox or combining protein with fat for breakfast every day is going to heal your gut overnight, or that's going to be the lasting solution to just never eat sugar, isn't a reality for people. And it's not even necessary. You don't need to cut that stuff out of you. You don't need to eat in that type of way, and you don't need to cut that stuff out of your diet. But people like to have actionable guarantees, right? It feels much safer for us to be like, okay, if you do this and this, you're going to get this. And that's what we keep buying into, but it's just marketing. It's not needed. It doesn't need to be that complicated, right? Like gut health is both too complex for that type of simple elimination or detox, and it's also too simple to need to put yourself in that position because the body is intelligent. And it all comes back to creating calm in the brain gut vortex through what we like to call, not what we like to call, but what it is called the vagus nerve. When you can create harmony between your emotions, your brain, your nervous system, and your digestive system, and the way that your digestive system absorbs food, then your gut is healthy. Because here's the truth. You can eat the cleanest, most pure, most intense, insane food combining diet, detox. The reason why it can work is because it's not about the food as much as it is about the fact that your brain is finally relaxed from worrying about it because you've committed to a program. And so your brain can shut off that part. You can say, oh, okay, I found the answer. I can stop. I can relax around this now. And that relaxation, though it's not true or not long term, that relaxation that lasts for 5 to 10 days is what creates the good gut health. It's even less about the cutting out sugar or cutting out whatever. It's that you've bought into something that you think is going to create a solution for you, so you've relaxed. That's why it works. Not because of some magical food combining / detox. Okay, we do not need rigid rules to support good gut health. You don't need to eliminate entire food groups. You don't need to eat at a specific time of day in a specific way. You don't need to do that. Truly. I eat so many more things now. I used to do weird things like only have fruit in the morning and then only have this with this. And no, it was nice again for 5 days when I first started because of the new relationship energy. But then it was like, no, it didn't work. And I got more anxious and I got more inflamed and my gut was worse, adrenal fatigue, weight gain, all the stuff. And it wasn't because I was eating. That added on to it for sure. The binging didn't help. But it was because my nervous system was completely out of whack, right? Our bodies thrive on diversity, diverse nutrients, even switching up the times of eating, right? The kinds of food that you have. The body thrives on that stuff as long as you're giving it, diversity and, there's high nutritional value foods that you're eating, a good percentage of the time. Not all the time, but a good percentage of the time, your body's going to appreciate you for that. It's going to have a strong metabolism. Your gut is going to be good. Right? We don't need these other things. It's just totally unnecessary. And that was one of the most freeing things that I learned, was that I didn't need to follow this. It was so freeing once I learned how to listen to my body. And once I saw that listening to your body is a training and is a method into of itself, that once I really clued into it, relaxed my nervous system because it was free. It was flexible. I could be spontaneous. I could, I didn't have to follow any type of rule. And I noticed that my cravings decreased. My binges became less frequent. I was enjoying eating again. So how do you learn how to tune into your body's signals? How do you learn to trust and get in tune with your body's hunger cues, your body's fullness cues? How do you know the difference between like a craving and I just want this and that's okay? Or a craving and, it's not really an ideal time for me to have this craving and I'm not going to have it and that's not restriction. How do you know how to make those calls for yourself? That is something that you have to learn how to do. Because when you learn how to do that, you can eat whatever you want, right? And so you want to start asking yourself, like, what does my body actually want? How do I actually feel after eating this? And you make your decisions based on your desires and your feelings and your higher value and your integrity, rather than a rule, a detox, some sort of plan that someone gave you, some sort of food plan with a promise that never delivers, right? Because our bodies are very smart. They're very intelligent. They want to talk to us. They want us to listen to them. They tell us when we're hungry. They tell us when we're full. And they usually tell us when foods don't sit well with us. But we can't hear those signals, those messages, when we're distracted by external rules or worrying about eating perfectly or, binging and going through that yo-yo situation. We can't get online with what our bodies are saying. And so that's why it's really important that we acknowledge the role of emotional eating and that you acknowledge the role of emotional eating in your life. And that if you are looking for a quick answer to solve what you consider to be the real problem, which is maybe weight gain or low energy, the real problem might not necessarily be the weight gain and figuring out a way to lose the weight. The real problem can really be the emotional eating and focusing on fixing a problem like weight gain or low energy instead of focusing on what is the root cause of my relationship to eating, right? Which is the more important thing to focus on, because if we just focus on the first part, which is getting a solution for what we think is a problem, we could fall into these marketing ploys of like, fix your gut and you'll lose weight. And here's how you fix your gut, right? You fall into those marketing things and you can fall into obsession. And it actually distracts you from what you really need to focus on, which is what you're really feeling in your life, what you're really feeling and what food is really covering up for you and eating is really covering up for you. Because for me, it wasn't until I started actually addressing, the emotional reasons behind why I was eating or why I was feeling a certain way, why I was anxious, that I could truly find that ease, that relaxation, that calm that my body needed in order to actually release the weight, in order to allow me to go online and listen to my cues and get to that place where now I feel so free and just so confident making decisions about eating, no matter what it is, right? Like I give myself permission to eat whatever I want. I don't have food like rules or a system of how I eat macros or things like that. It just doesn't happen for me anymore. Right? So if you find yourself caught up in this clean eating craze or feel like you've gotten sucked into this like gut health thing as something that you become obsessed with, take this as your permission slip to step back from that. You don't need to follow every trend. You don't need to restrict yourself or have some program to follow with like, completely made up rules of timings of eating and cut out this and cut out that. You don't need to do that, right? It's so much simpler than that. It's turning on the antenna to listen to yourself, listen to your cues, have a daily conversation with yourself about your feelings, understand the connection between your desire to eat and what's going on internally. And this is how you're going to heal. This is how you create a sustainable, joyful relationship to food and eating. And once you have that, if weight loss is your goal, it effortlessly comes off. Effortlessly comes off. All right, so that is all I have for you today. And as always, have an amazing, amazing week. And remember that whatever you're working towards, however you want to feel in your life, you could do it. You are worth it. And if you're listening to this on Apple, Spotify, please rate us, leave a review. It really helps us with the algorithm. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And until next time, I'm Alana, and thank you for listening to Emotional Eating Unwrapped.